Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Grace Lordan, the host of Workforce, a podcast that blends behavioral science insights and work insights. You are listening to the bonus content, and you have picked a good one. This is one of my favorite episodes, Office Fridge Politics. If you listened to the full episode, and I hope that you did, you will know that I spoke to Zak Toscani, a comedian from the United States. In this episode, he relays a tale of Office Fridge Politics that involves a shrimp cocktail being stolen. Will the mystery ever be solved? You can listen to the full interview and find out now.
So I worked at a post-production subtitling company in Los Angeles. It was kind of a part-time job to make ends meet while I was pursuing comedy full-time. And I worked in a pretty small room. There's maybe 6 of us in this tiny little room, so we got to know each other pretty closely over the few months. And the guy who sat across from me, we were usually the first ones to get there in the morning. And he came in, and he was like, yesterday someone threw my lunch away. I had a shrimp fried rice. I had microwaved it. And then I guess he puts it in the fridge after the microwave, which is kind of a weird move, but he liked it a little cooler. And I guess someone had thrown it away, just taken it and thrown it in the trash. And he didn't know who did it, why they did it. And, it's just him and I kind of talking. And then the HR, the woman who was head of HR came in, and she goes, we have video cameras in the kitchen. We could review the tape and see who did it. And I couldn't believe that she offered that. So she took him back to where the cameras were, and they watched it, and they saw that it was the woman who sat right next to me who took his food out of the fridge and just threw it away. And then from there, I just kind of started live tweeting the whole thing. And it was crazy because the guy whose food got thrown away, he didn't want to get anyone fired. He didn't want anyone to lose their job over this. So he was just kind of like, okay, with this information, now I know to watch out for this person. They're going to take my lunch and throw it away sometimes. And that's where he was going to leave it, which I thought was pretty cool of him. He didn't want to blow up anyone's spot. But then when the woman who came in and threw the lunch away, when she came and sat down, it was like a powder keg, because now I know and he knows all of what happened. And then she comes sitting down, and then he's like, yeah, someone took my lunch yesterday and someone threw it away. And she was like, oh my God, like, who would do that? That's crazy. And I'm just sitting next to her like I'm about to jump out of my skin, because I cannot believe that this is the situation that we're all in. And so she's kind of denying it there, because there's a company-wide email that goes out that's like, hey, just, so everyone knows, don't take people's lunches out of the fridge. Don't throw them away. And she's like, I don't know who would do that. She's just being very vocally loud about how she's not involved with this at all. And so the tension is high in that room. And, eventually pretty much everyone else in the company finds out this whole story, that this woman threw his lunch away, and now she's kind of denying it. So it's this big open secret. And so as I'm live tweeting this, what's going on between them, it's blowing up on social media. I never really, I figured it was a funny story to tell, but I didn't know that it was going to really resonate with a lot of people. And so I was kind of live tweeting this whole situation. And, people were telling me, there's got to be another level to this. There's got to be, everyone wanted the confrontation, right? Everyone wants that guy to go up to her and be like, I know you stole my lunch. But I kind of found this whole play going on underneath the surface way more fascinating. And so about 2 days after that, there was a big theory amongst everyone who was reading the tweets and talking to me that maybe she was allergic to shrimp. Maybe she didn't like the smell. So I kind of put myself in this story by, I bought shrimp fried rice for the entire room for all 6 people. One day I was like, hey, everyone, I just want to surprise everyone with lunch. I bought shrimp fried rice. And the woman who threw the lunch away goes, I love shrimp fried rice. So that theory gets blown out of the water. She's eating it and she's enjoying it. And it's just pandemonium in there. It's wild. So yeah, it's like I don't know why. I still don't know why she did it. I don't know if she knows why she did it. I don't know that she knows that she did it. You know, there was this kind of um I don't know how best to describe her, but it didn't seem like someone who was terribly on the internet a lot. So she like as this Twitter thread is blowing up, I'm like, "Oh my god, she's going to see this." And I have to sit next to this woman and maybe she has some words for me. From my knowledge, she never saw it. Still has never seen it. She's still working at that company. I know people that are still there and they're like, "Yep, she's still here."
Have there been any other issues with lunches going missing?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, so that she's calmed on that. Maybe she's moved on to other crimes.
And you were six people, Zach. So were you good colleagues, work enemies, or was it just that you were distant, so you didn't know her so well?
Well, yeah, I mean, what's funny is I worked with her the entire time. I was pretty much sitting next to her the entire time I worked at that company for about 2 years. Um, and she's the type of person I would say that, you get along with, but you're kind of like, I leave this relationship at work.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of talk of like what's going on outside. She was really into roller derby. There's like certain things I would be let in on in her life. But for the most part, we weren't terribly close. If anything, it was kind of like you knew something was she was. I don't know. She's just kind of an odd duck, so you knew something was eventually something was going to happen. But I had no idea. I also had no idea that HR could. I don't even know the legalities of that they could show like private camera footage to employees and then they like the company was just kind of like they'll sort it out. So there was really no oversight to this whole thing, which kind of allowed all of us to kind of play in the situation.
In a way, she's lucky that you and your colleague were kind of cool about it. So I know that you were interested and you wanted to know her motivation and you bought the shrimp and rice, but somebody else could have been quite confrontational about what happened.
Totally, absolutely. I mean, I really left it up to his hands, the victim in this whole thing, the man whose lunch was lost. I kind of like I think it's up to this guy to see what happens. And yeah, I did honestly think it was very cool of him to not want to get this person. Like he wasn't out for vengeance. He was upset, obviously. He was perturbed that his lunch got thrown away, but um I did admire that he was just like, well, now I know that about that person and I'll just keep that in my head. And I was like, oh, that's smart. You know what I mean? You're using the information. Maybe you're waiting for just the right time to drop it. Like this guy
Did
should
she
be in royalty or something.
did she use the fridge, Zach? Was she somebody who put her lunch, put her drinks into the fridge?
Yeah, she I think daily ate like microwavable meals, like a lean cuisine type of deal. So she was in the kitchen often.
Okay.
And quite a lot of us were because the company offered like free snacks and there was always fruit. So people were going in and out. So it's kind of surprising that no one physically saw her do this. And I don't know, maybe she was waiting for a time where no one else was in the kitchen. It's really interesting to think if whether she was completely aloof in the situation or if it was like a criminal mastermind and she's planned out all these things and then just didn't account for the cameras.
I like the idea of the latter, that she's a criminal mastermind and she just likes to mess around with people. And
Exactly.
so one thing I'm interested in about the office fridge is thinking about it as a barometer for office culture. So was the culture negative in the company that you're in, or was she somebody who brought negative energy in and everyone else was fine?
I would say that the company at whole was kind of it was just there wasn't a lot of oversight or a lot of they were just kind of worried about all these because it was subtitling. They have all these agreements with Netflix and Amazon and all, so they were kind of more focused about their clients, and we were kind of left unattended for the most part. I mean, we had quotas we had to hit for movies and television shows to go through in a day and check the subtitling and positioning and all that kind of stuff. But it was a really kind of free reign type of situation, which is nice. I didn't want to be like having someone sitting over my shoulder watching every move, but I think that the kind of looseness allowed for things like that to happen, for people to go rogue, I guess. Um, and she wasn't even really necessarily a negative um, person. She was just kind of, it's hard to say. You're just like, I think she's just a little different, I would say. Um, and it was really the only time that she did anything. How should I word this? It was the only time that she like interacted with other people was this kind of um, activity. She wasn't terribly social, um, and I think she had a lot of problems doing this kind of work, and so she would get really frustrated. I remember that she would get really frustrated and go out to her car, and I think sometimes would like scream or cry and then come back. So I think she just takes things really intensely and maybe put some personal feelings onto things that were just more kind of business or corporate. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of, it was a little bit Wild Westy, I guess. I mean, just from the fact of the HR person being like, they're just kind of stirring
Take the
drama.
footage.
Yeah, exactly. They're like not trying to resolve this at all. They're just like, I don't know. Here's who did it. What do you want to do? So it was a really interesting place to work.
And did HR stay with you when you were watching and when the big reveal happened that it was her, or did they just give you the footage and you went away?
So when the HR person came into the room that he and I were working at, and she was like, "We have the video," and so he just went back and watched. So I didn't actually get to see the video. I just saw that interaction, and then when he came back, he was like, "It was her. It was Sharon." I won't say her last name, but so he knew from that moment, and then we just kind of talked because I think we had about an hour until the next person came in. So we were just like, oh my God, why would she do this? Was she mad at you? Like, a lot of people theorized that maybe there was something going on between the two of them. Like
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And knowing these two people, I would be 100%, I would be so surprised if there was anything going on between them personally, like any kind of a relationship or something went wrong, because they just didn't really, two completely different people, and they didn't really interact too much at work. I suppose it's possible, but from my understanding and from my experience in that situation, it was just kind of a random crime, which usually they say those ones don't get solved, like
And you
random
did it. You managed to solve it, which is good.
Yeah, yeah. And then really blow it up. I mean, I was kind of worried, honestly, when the Twitter thread started blowing up. I was like, oh man, I hope that she doesn't read this and kind of think that I was, putting her in a bad spot. I made it all anonymous, but you never really know. I guess I would have apprehension if there was a huge story on the internet and then I was the anonymous source of this story. But it was, I mean, I would go to work the next couple of days and everyone in the company, even the president of the company, was like, that was crazy. I read your Twitter thread. And it's just like bizarre because like nothing got done. Nothing was, she still works there. She got employee of the month like 2 months later after that.
That is fantastic. So can you tell me something about the people who you interacted with on Twitter? So you mentioned about their theories about what might be going on, but did anybody reveal any of their own plights, kind of similar stories about office culture and talking specifically about the fridge and things that happened to them?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people that have had experiences with things going missing from the fridge. So that was a big contingent of the comments and the threads where it would go. It originated on Twitter, but now it's on Reddit and all these other kind of websites. And so yeah, a lot of people had experiences where their food got stolen, and then a lot of people would share their own, because it seems like fridge crimes, there's no police unit for that. There's no corporate structure. There's no HR like rules about that. It seems like it's a pretty societal rule that we enforce ourselves. So some people would talk about when their food started getting stolen, that they would not poison it, but they would they would put like something really gross on it. Like they would either leave it moldy, or that they would put oh god, what was some of them? They would just put like really nasty stuff on it. And so that when the person would steal it, and then they would kind of learn their lesson, and then that would stop.
I hadn't thought about it before, but laxatives or something like that could be quite good, right? To teach someone a lesson, but not go over a line that you would do them harm.
100%. Yeah, laxatives, that's a good move. That's a pro move. Because it's not any serious damage, but you're going to remember that. You're going to remember.
Yeah, you're not going to be eating my shrimp again.
Yeah. No more morning yogurts for you.
Has this changed your behavior, Zach, when it comes to leaving like high quality items in a fridge? Or have you just chalked it up to this is one of those things, someone who's disgruntled or something else was going on in her life who behaved that way, and now it's over?
Right. Well, I mean, honestly, I'm a full-time comedian now. So if anyone steals something from the fridge, it would probably be me in the middle of the night and then not remembering it. So fortunately, I don't have to contend with that so much in my life anymore. But when I was working in offices and all the various jobs I had, I was always, maybe it was my laziness helped me, because I always just ordered food. I never brought, I just felt a little strange bringing my lunch. And then it just sitting there and then just knowing what you're going to have for lunch. I don't know, always just kind of, I liked the excitement, like, what am I going to get? And I would always extend my lunch breaks. I wouldn't clock out. I had my own little scams on the side that I was doing to make things more bearable for me. But yeah, in stand-up, it doesn't really happen so much. If anything, it's probably like, hey, who stole my booze, or various other substances. It's not so much a food situation.
And do you feel as a comedian that you end up being thicker skinned than the average person who works in a regular company? Because I guess when you start off, you deal with audiences. Some people are quite nice and some people are less so. So do you kind of end up just being a bit tougher to situations like food theft, surely by what you're doing for a living?
That's a good question. I honestly felt like being a comedian at the time was what made me think, like, I immediately, as this was happening, as the shrimp fried rice thing was happening, it was what allowed me to be like, oh, I think this is funny enough or interesting enough to document. But in terms of like callousness, I don't think I've hardened too much to it. If anything, I always try to go where there's a funny story, or go down like a path where you're like, ooh, this is interesting. I'm just going to go and explore that. But I'm very glad to be out of the corporate structure. I think a little part of me knew that I was kind of a round whatever, a round thing,
a round peg in a square hole. That's it.
I know. A round peg. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, so it always kind of felt like a bizarre fit, and I've had so many different jobs, so it's like I wasn't so like I got to get out of here right now, but I was always kind of planning my exit, and I think just because of not necessarily things like your lunch getting stolen, but just the atmosphere of you're like, oh, I'm just around a bunch of people I don't really know. And I don't know what these people are capable of. You have a lot of work friends where you're like, I would never talk to this person outside of work. I don't want to interact with these people. I just want to get paid and go home. So I was always kind of planning my exit, so to speak. But it was fun. I mean, honestly, it is a good way of getting material. You're around a bunch of people that are quite different than you. They have different goals. They have different reasons for being there. So I do miss it. I do miss having like very weird day jobs. You're just you're open to all these new experiences, where now as a comic, it can be a little, you just kind of are in a bubble. So it's nice to go outside of that. And that's why I like traveling and kind of doing things outside of comedy, is just kind of putting yourself in the world. And there's just so many interesting things happening, and interesting people, and events like, a lunch getting stolen turns into this huge thing that for years now, it'll come up every once in a while. And it's just interesting. Like, I didn't really realize how relatable it was to a lot of people, or how many people have work nemesis. Um, sorry, my English is really bad. But you guys invented it. We just stole it. So I'm not
Well,
great at it.
It feels like your colleague had a work nemesis and he didn't even realize it, which is the interesting thing about office politics. Somebody can have a relationship with you and you know absolutely nothing about it.
Exactly. And then you watch true crime shows, and it's always like, we had no idea that person was capable of that. And you can just extend that and put that on anybody. You have no idea what people are capable of. And like, and in the same way, the woman sitting next to me was capable of taking lunch, but then the guy across from me was capable of being like, yeah, I'm not going to like blow up this woman's spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And did this make your bit, Zach? Did you do stand up with it on stage live?
No, I didn't. It's so convoluted. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that even I forgot, all the like twists and turns. There's so much of it. And I feel like it was so kind of known, and I didn't have a conclusion. I think that was the other thing about this story, was you realize how many people really, just in storytelling, I guess, some people really like a concise, clear ending where there is resolution. There's tension and then there's resolution. And with this one, it was just kind of tension throughout. Like, we know who did it, but we have no reason why. And I think that's the reason, or that's the question.
Is the motive.
A lot of people have, is still the motive. And I think it's more fun to not know. I think it's fun to you can put, whatever you think is on there, and you can see a lot of different scenarios.
What interested me the most about this was that so many people knew about it and no one asked her. So I can understand you not asking and him not asking, but surely there's at least one busybody who says, well, I have to ask her. I have to know. I have to have the resolution to this story.
Totally. Well, what's funny is I think she is the busybody. So if it weren't her involved, I think she would be the one who's like, no, we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
So it's very strange. And yeah, I think, I think everyone at the company was had the same thinking I did, where it was like, well, if the guy whose lunch got stolen, if he's kind of okay with it just being this way and not having, he didn't want to directly go up to her and have conflict, or, be like, I know you took it. He was just like, okay, now I know, and I'm okay with that. And so I think everyone kind of took that lead. And then, yeah, as it was blowing up, everyone was like, I mean, I would just walk in and people would like look at me with like these huge eyes, like, oh my God, does she know? Does she know? And I was like, she never said anything to me. She sits right next to me. She'd have all the opportunity in the world to just be like, hey, I saw what you wrote, or, I didn't do that, or deny it, whatever she was going to do. Yeah, it was just a really wild scene. And I've had coworkers like that in the past, where you're just kind of like, I don't know what you're capable of, but I don't want to find out. So I think maybe some people were nervous if they would approach her, that they would identify themselves as maybe a conflict person for her, and maybe stealing lunches was the start of where she could go. Exactly.
It's funny how the human mind really wants resolution, because as you're talking and you're saying how relaxed he was, I'm thinking they definitely had a relationship. So even I now want a resolution to the story. I'm writing the ending. We should pitch it. We should pitch it for Netflix. I'm writing that ending for you.
Absolutely. I'd be into that. We'll go in together.